Something Worth Hearing is a podcast about criminal justice, the charter, and other legal matters. These are real stories about real people, where I'll look at what the laws are, who is enforcing them, and how does our system really work.
This is the Something Worth Hearing podcast with Paul Henderson.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with co-producer Atlee James in our home studio.
Yes. Hi, Paul.
How's it going?
It's good. It's going well. Good to be here.
Yeah, good. So we are into this episode and we're going to talk about this map in more detail.
Okay.
I introduced this map in a previous episode, I think the first one. And this map, just to quickly recount, is a map of more or less every homicide in the Chilliwack area in the last 20 years. Some of them are in Mission, a couple in Abbotsford, a couple in Hope. Some are Chilliwack people with interesting stories that we'll get into. But more or less, it's everyone. I've kept track of that ever since. For 15 years, I look back and then I just kept track of it because it was my job as a newspaper reporter covering courts and crime. And I kept track of it, then obsessively made a map like a bit of a weirdo, but I was glad I did. And then now I made a better version for the podcast. And we're going to get into some of the cases. We're not going to go in super depth here, but because it's the first time addressing the map, I just want to talk about the cases that are before the courts right now. So as everyone probably knows, in a criminal case, if somebody is accused of a crime and charged, then begins a long, slow process, especially a homicide case, because they're obviously among the most serious things you can imagine, and they can be complicated. Some of them ridiculously complicated, but whether it's DNA evidence or computer technology or what have you, Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the ones that I'm covering right now. I've written about in recent weeks. And the other thing that's interesting that I want to mention, I'm not going to say it's interesting, but I find it, is that I get a lot of people contacting me about the cases, whether it is a family member, a child, or a partner of a victim, or occasionally I will run into them at court, and sometimes they're confused and they ask me for help or what's going on, why is this taking so long?
Yeah.
And I am in regular contact with quite a few people. Like this week, I've talked to probably 4 different family members of homicide victims, whether they're giving me information or they're asking me or what have you. So I just want to quickly talk about some of that and some of these cases and where they're at. And I mean, some of these will be resolved, hopefully within weeks or months. Some of them maybe not. Sometimes these cases take forever.
And with these cases too, so we had a conversation before we started the podcast. So there's a lot of questions around this. Like even as you go through the cases, I may just sort of ask you a few questions because, like I say, most of us we haven't made a map of this. And you've immersed yourself into these cases. But I do find it fascinating how you'll have victims, family members coming up to you, and how you even deal with that. So I mean, maybe that's a topic we can talk about later. But I can't imagine what that must be like. But so these are the current cases that are in our local courts at the moment. Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah, there's if I'm to go through the actual.
Okay.
I guess what there is here is 6 cases, I would say, currently in our court system.
And these are also cases that are on the map.
Every one of these is a case. 5 out of 6 are on the map, and 1, 2, 3. 4 out of the 6 are in Chilliwack, BC Supreme Court. One's in Abbotsford, BC Supreme Court, and one is farther afield, but I'll explain why.
Okay.
That one's on the map. So, anyway, but the most recent homicide in Chilliwack, as of recording, let's hope there isn't another one by the time this comes out.
Yeah, fair.
Was pretty recently, and it was that of Christopher Benson is his name. And as soon as it came out that he was the victim, sometimes I also get people telling me things before the police tell us. That doesn't mean I report it because I need to verify things. I have reliable sources and I have unreliable sources and everything in between. And I can't count on I have some sources who if you saw them or talked to them, you'd think that's
Interesting.
a dodgy fella. But I have one guy like that, and everything he's ever told me has turned out to be accurate. So I
Okay.
trust his little rumors. I still don't report them until they're verified. But sometimes I have information in my head that someone did something, and then it turns out it's right, and I'm like, damn, he got it right again.
Wow.
But I never report. He's always very scared to tell me stuff. But he's been in that world, in that criminal world, and he claims to be out of it.
But you're right. It has to be verified before you can even act on it.
Yeah, unless there's like 2 or 3 ways I've verified it outside of official sources. But even then, like I knew the victim. I had 3 people tell me Chris Benson was the murder victim before the police finally told us it was Chris Benson.
Okay.
But I still didn't report it because that's a murder victim. And the thing with a homicide victim is IHIT will announce when they were on scene. So quite happens what happens if there's a homicide. First people on scene obviously are the local police. So if you're the Chilliwack RCMP or if you're in Fort Nelson or you're in Victoria, those are the police. And then in the Lower Mainland, they have the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team. And that is a team of officers from all over from RCMP, VPD, Abbotsford Police Department.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So it's a team made up of other officers that focus on homicides. That's their specialty. But they're not, people often refer to it as the RCMP's IHIT. Well, it's not really RCMP's team because there could be Abbotsford Police Department officers on there. You don't know because they're just IHIT. So what happens when IHIT gets involved, then they usually send a statement out saying there was an incident, a body was found, IHIT's involved.
Okay.
And sometimes that's about all they'll tell you because they like to keep it tight because having said that, sometimes they want information from the public. Okay. So then they tell you a lot more. So in the case of Chris Benson, they told us the victim's name very quickly. Now, normally they have to, they always have to identify the victim and then notify next of kin. Okay. And for obvious privacy and just human decency reasons.
And we see that quite a bit in the articles when it's released. We have to notify next of kin.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And so for decency reasons, they're not going to tell you the name, or I wouldn't report the name before mom found out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it's hard to deal with that. In fact, I've got one case here, they've never released the name, but it's been almost a year. So I'm going to release the name because I know it. But I haven't even released it. I sort of forgot to, frankly.
Okay.
It's a confusing case. It's a very weird one. But the Chris Benson case was interesting. So they released that right away. I reported it out. Other media reported it out. And then like maybe 2-3 days later, I think it was 4 days later, the homicide was Sunday morning. I think on Wednesday, they'd arrested 3 people and charged them with second-degree murder. Okay. So they knew who did it. Yeah. I heard a source tell me that there was cameras all over the house where he was shot. There was also an attempted murder victim. So there was a victim who probably saw it.
I see.
Sometimes those people are really unreliable because they're scared or high or whatever it is. Because this was a targeted homicide.
Known to police?
Yeah, not just known to police, but well known to police. And I'm not going to say it was a gang hit because sometimes there's a difference between incidents that are part of the Lower Mainland gang conflict. Mm-hmm. That's what IHIT will say. And sometimes you're like, well, that guy's a gangster, but in a kind of casual way. So there's a lot of low-level, super prolific offenders, drug traffickers. They're not technically in a gang.
I see.
The gang situation in BC has only gotten more complicated. Back when the UN gang was around, you had the UN, the Hells Angels, the Wolfpack, the Red Scorpions. Versions of those still exist, the Bacon Brothers. But it's much more complicated now to know who's aligned with who.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I need Kim Boland on here because she's the gang expert, Vancouver Sun reporter, Kim Boland. She knows more about gangs in the Lower Mainland than anybody.
Oh, that'd be fascinating, yeah.
We often share information. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I definitely would love to get her on.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, the Chris Benson homicide, they arrested someone named Jason Himpfen, Zoltan Luzier, and Chris Michael. And I don't know how to pronounce that, Meischl. And I had somebody tell me, my unreliable source, tell me, it was this guy Chris, came in from Abbotsford, and sure enough, it was a guy named Chris Michael who did it. So that wasn't really super useful information, but again, he kind of knew who did it. Okay. And, he kind of knew why. I'm not going to release that because it's super rumor. Yeah. But that's a case where it's, an individual who's really well known to police. A lot of people said bad things online, like couldn't have happened to a better guy, good riddance, stuff like that, because he's done a lot of very, very, very bad things in his life. I updated on a couple of old stories about him. People got mad at me.
Okay.
Because, this is a murder victim.
Yeah.
No one deserves to get murdered, even a murderer.
Yeah.
That's not our system. That's not our extrajudicial killings are not part of the.
Yeah. No.
So it's not cool to do that. But I still think it's important for the public to know if a murder victim is a bad dude. It's good for the public to know that so they don't sit there and worry that, maybe I'm going to get murdered.
Random serial kill. Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah, I'd like to know what, if some people are in sort of living a specific lifestyle that is conducive to that type of violence, then, I know that if I'm staying away from it, I'm safe. So exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
And when you point that out, there's an inevitable amount of schadenfreude out there. Do you know what schadenfreude is?
No, you're going to tell me though.
I can tell by the look in your eyes. You didn't. Schadenfreude, as you know, obviously is a German word, but schadenfreude is feeling pleasure in the pain of others.
Okay.
So, when Willie Picton got killed in Kent, and apparently he had a broomstick jammed into his skull so deeply that they had to break it off to put him in the MRI machine to his body.
Wow.
There was some schadenfreude in the Lower Mainland, let me tell you. Anyway, that's the Chris Benson. That's the most local one, most recent one, and it's not on my map. It's on my version at home, but I got to pop it on there.
Yeah,
it was in our downtown core area. Another one I've been covering very closely, and people know a lot about, is the case of John Kavalov and Valerie Smith. They lived in the Baker Trails Mobile Home Park in the Chilliwack River Valley, and there's their pictures right there. More or less, this is the area.
Yeah.
They were in this mobile home park. Their neighbor, Robert Freeman, allegedly came out of his trailer with a gun. They'd long had a dispute over their little dog, Susie the Yorkie. And Robert Freeman allegedly shot John, killed him in the driveway. His friend ran away, and then he shot Valerie Smith and killed her. He's 83 years old. I'm told that he is actually a war veteran that maybe was in like the Congo and might have some PTSD. Clearly has some mental health issues. I believe he's pleading NCR, which is not criminally responsible by reason of mental defect. So the family of these victims are very frustrated by the delays. So much so that recently they went and sort of protested at his latest appearance with like signs on the court's steps complaining about justice, because it's gone on for 2.5 years, and all that time, Freeman, the accused, his lawyers have all but admitted he did it, because NCR means you did it, but you're pleading insanity, basically.
Yeah.
He's living out in a townhouse near downtown Chilliwack. I know exactly where he's living.
Wow.
Because he's out on bail.
That's gotta be frustrating.
That's part of our system, and he's obviously not a serious threat because he's 83 years old. But it does seem odd if someone has mental health issues and they know how to use firearms, that he's living in the community.
Yeah, that's scary.
So it's scary, but more than that, it's very frustrating for the family. Travis Finnegan and Joy, they're great people with their. So that's a case I'm covering closely, and he's recently just fired his lawyer, which will delay the trial even more.
Oh, it's frustrating.
And it's frustrating because his lawyer is Simon Buck, who is a high-profile Lower Mainland gang lawyer who's currently defending Cody Haversher, who was one of the main culprits in the Surrey 6 murder, which was a famous 6 people killed, including 2 innocent people in the apartment building in Surrey. But he was so busy covering that, he didn't have time for this. So he's been fired. And it's a very frustrating thing when lawyers take on cases they don't have time for, because it just causes delay for everybody involved. Another one that was in court yesterday is a guy by the name of David Knox. He's accused with murdering Chantel Rule. She was a 37-year-old woman who was somewhat troubled, living on the streets, and she was killed. That's Chantel.
Chantel, yeah.
It's a high school graduation picture.
Yeah.
She was found behind the old Canadian Tire by the Bottle Depot near the blackberry bushes there. And I've been to court frequently, and her mother is there. Her mother is very distraught and confused and upset. And, well, not confused, but she's very friendly and asks me what's going on. And she's got family or friends with her supporting her. So that's one that's tough because she's very, they just seem just defeated and sad, obviously. And when she was first murdered, we didn't know who it was. And I wrote a story that was really just sort of a think piece off the top of my head pondering how, it's important to know that everybody had a mother
absolutely,
who loved them and a father, and they had an upbringing and they had friends and family. We dismiss people. This happened on the downtown east side with the prostitutes Willie Picton killed. People disposed of, or just didn't think anything of them. But I pointed out that I didn't know who it was, pointed out it was a real person and it was all that. And I got a very, very, very thoughtful
that's nice.
thank you from the family for
Everybody
humanizing.
were babies at one point, right? Little kids. So
yeah, it's hard to think about that. Even, yes. So that case is ongoing, but it's just slowly winding through. Okay. I think David Knox has actually got some sort of, not sort of insanity defense, but I think he's a developmentally delayed or something.
I see.
He seems like he's got mental health problems or, yeah.
Those are the 3 cases so far. And then, so you'll be when you're doing your podcast, or when you're going to be referencing these from time to time as updates sort of come in. So from an audience, I mean, I'm curious to see what things will happen. So things will be happening in the future, and you'll be able to update us kind of as much as you can.
Obviously with a podcast, we're only filming infrequently and releasing them infrequently, but my website, which is something worth reading, pauljhenderson.com, that's where I cover these stories. Not every court appearance, but quite often if I have time, I'll be updating stories. So it's always available there. And then there's too many here to do a podcast on each of them. But I will be bringing up some of these cases, especially if they are unsolved or they address unusual circumstances. Yeah. The NCR double homicide, that's definitely an interesting circumstance. I mean, they're all interesting. They're people's lives, but I can't report on them all. But I will be coming back to them, and definitely in my writing. So,
that's great.
Yeah, for sure. And there's another one I wanted to mention that I've been listening into. This is an Abbotsford Supreme Court, and I'm a court accreditation, BC Supreme Court accreditation, which means court's public. Anybody can go to court. I was trying to say that to people. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing special about my court accreditation except that I can record for note-taking purposes in a courtroom. The public can't.
I see.
I can use social media from the courtroom. That's a new one they added. So I could tweet out,
"Oh wow,
I'm in the courtroom, la-di-da," or "This just happened in the courtroom."
Oh, okay.
You can't, and I can use an electronic device like a computer. The general public can't have their computer or their phone in their hand. They can't record, and they can't obviously use social media. Other than that, I have no special privileges. So
that's still quite. Can you say it's cool? I mean, I think it's something where if as your audience is tuning in to this podcast, though, we could always have a look and see what's happening if it's real time events. Yeah, you do have that option, which is pretty cool.
I used to do it more often when in a way, ironically, now that social media is huge, I do it less.
Yeah.
But when Twitter was newer and it was like kind of I'm in the courtroom right now.
Yeah.
People are used to things happening live and they don't necessarily care.
Yeah.
But I always like to point out how it's actually not anything that special, because people sometimes think journalists have some special access. But everything I get, even if I get court documents, like I just got the transcripts. I got the audio recording of a BC Court of Appeal hearing of a case in Chilliwack that I covered years ago, and it was sort of important to me. I had to pay $27 for it, but I got that recording. But that's not anything special because I'm a journalist.
Okay.
Anybody can get access to these things. Sometimes they're going to make it more difficult for you at the court registry, and they're like, "Why do you want to know this?" And so if you're a family member, they might say, "Okay," or if you're connected to the case, "Okay," or if you're a journalist, "Okay." They're going to ask questions if you're just a random person who wants to hear. But anybody can walk into a courtroom.
But we do have that right.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
We have an open court principle is a thing in Canada. And there used to be court watchers in Chilliwack all the time. There was 3 old guys at various times, sometimes all 3 of them. And they were great. I'd go in and they would tell me, oh, I missed what happened. They're like, oh yeah, you should see this kid,
Wow.
They're
That's
great.
wow.
One of them passed away. One of them moved away. And the other one, Glenn, I don't know why he doesn't go in anymore. I know his family quite well. It's the Gore family, actually.
Okay.
The Garrison Crossing Gore, they built a lot of the...
Yeah.
Glenn Gore, he was a great court watcher. Good guy, great guy.
Maybe we got maybe time to reach out
Should
to him.
get him on here.
100%. Yeah.
But in Abbotsford, the other thing I have the ability to do, and I'm not sure if this is because of accreditation or anybody could. I think anybody could ask for it, but I can get dial-in. This is a positive remnant from the podcast, the pandemic, is dial-in access to a courtroom. So a lot of lawyers, sometimes even the judges, are actually on screen, on video in a courtroom. I've been in a courtroom before where there was a case going on, and the only 2 people in the courtroom were me and the clerk, because the defense lawyer, the Crown Counsel, and the judge were all on screen.
Oh, wow.
But it's in Chilliwack Court.
Okay.
It's
Interesting. That'd be...
There's a certain Crown Counsel. There's a certain woman in Chilliwack who I know pretty well. I've only ever seen her on the screen.
Okay.
She doesn't ever walk across I think she works from home.
Fair.
But the benefit is that I can dial in with a phone. My video, I don't have video obviously, and I'm muted. But I can dial in to listen to. And there's a case in
Is that accessible to the public for dialing in?
I believe you need to have. I have to ask for access for provincial court for the Chilliwack Court Registry.
Okay.
Or whatever court registry. And if it's for Supreme or Appeals Court, I contact a certain individual I know, Bruce Cohen, who's a senior official. He's been around forever, and he gets me the access to Supreme Court.
good.
I don't think anybody could get that. I think my court accreditation affords me the.
Well, I think that would be crazy. 1,000 people.
Exactly.
That would just be nuts. Yeah, it'd be nuts.
Well, especially if you had a case that was like controversial and it was like
Absolutely.
somebody who was, these angry people dialing, they can mute you, but it would just be problematic.
Yes.
So sometimes they'll see my phone number will appear on the screen, and there'll be other cases that day, and the judge will say, just see this number on the screen, 604. So just wondering, and I'm just like, unmute myself.
Yeah.
Just a journalist.
Yeah.
Mute.
Please don't say my whole phone number.
Yeah, I know. I'm in the kitchen. But the one I dial in for a few times is there's this case of these 70-year-old couple, Arnold and Joanne DeYoung,
Okay.
in Abbotsford. And they were in their 70s and they were murdered in their own house. And it's terrible enough, but it's the details I've heard so far. I haven't really reported much on it. I've been in a lot of contact with their daughter who's telling me things and helping out. But the accused are two 22-year-olds and a 20-year-old, Abjit Singh, Gurkaran Singh, and Kushvi Tour. And I believe they're international students. And they're accused of
My goodness. Yeah. I've heard about this one.
killing,
Yeah.
and apparently it was a money thing. There was bank accounts involved, but that case is an example of one where it goes on and on and on. I turned on the other day and I didn't even know I was listening to the right case because they were talking about alleles and stochastic data sets, and I realized it was an all-day detailed conversation about with the DNA expert.
Oh, okay.
So, and then another day I dialed in and there was an expert talking in great detail about the different ways that blood splatter forms when it lands.
Yeah. Okay.
And just super, super detailed.
Yeah.
So it's a very technical forensic based case. So it's tough to cover because what do you write about that? But that case is, as of recording, going to be wrapping up relatively soon.
Okay.
Within a week, at least the Crown and Defense will wrap up. So
we can get an update on that one.
Yep.
Okay.
That one's not on my map because it's in Abbotsford, but I found it very interesting because it's sometimes there's killings. Every killing is terrible. A lot of times if it's like a targeted killing between two gangsters in Abbotsford, I'm not going to, but this is everyone's sort of nightmare scenario where you have like, a couple of seniors in a nice middle-class, semi-rural neighborhood of Abbotsford. It's the kind of thing it's like the makings of a Netflix sort of
Absolutely
type documentary. So that's one that I'm following too. Another one I just quickly want to mention is out in Bridal Falls area. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Andy Knott.
Okay.
Now, his name has never been, I've never reported his name or said his name or released his name, but this homicide goes back, it is 2025, but it was early. It's over a year old.
Okay.
He was found near the, I think it was a trailer park in Bridal Falls. And the person accused of his killing is named Omar Ibrahim. And I've covered him in court, and it's very strange. He behaves very strangely. He's in custody. He's always on video. But he's also charged with a bunch of other things, totally unrelated, arson, assault, a couple things, and he's pleading guilty to those. He's getting sentenced very soon. But it's one of those ones where they've told us nothing. They've told the public nothing, whether this is targeted, whether it was some sort of a relationship or what it was.
Yeah.
It's just two seemingly strangers in their 30s. One murdered the other. So I'm following that one, but it's full of mysteries.
Okay.
I have no idea. I barely even know who this Andy Knott. I haven't found much out about him.
Okay.
He seems like a regular guy. And then another one that I'm covering a little bit more. I haven't covered it closely. It's not really a local case, but is that of Trina Hunt.
Yes.
And a lot of people know that. It's been a lot of publicity because her body was found on in a slightly remote area near Hope in 2021.
Yeah.
Can't keep track of them all in my head. And right away, her husband, Ian, was the suspect, the main suspect. This has gone on forever. There's Facebook groups. There are, massive conversations about this. But Ian Hunt has never been charged with murder. He has been charged with indignity to human remains.
Okay.
So sometimes called interference with a dead body.
Yeah.
And this often happens when they just don't have enough evidence to prove that the individual committed the crime.
Okay.
But somehow they do have enough evidence to know that he dumped the body.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm sure there's more. How the laws work around that would be fascinating. Because I know for someone just hearing about that case, I mean, you make your assumptions. I don't want to assume anything, but you make your assumptions and you go, okay, so excuse me, it's not a murder charge. So this one here, I'm very interested to hear as this one goes and what the verdicts will be. And why.
In fact, David Knox. Chantel Roux was found, I told you, behind the Canadian Tire.
Yes.
He's charged with murder, but he's also charged with indignity to human remains because she was killed somewhere else and he put the body there.
Okay.
So that's the same. But clearly they just don't have enough evidence to pin. And again, a common sense perspective, just kind of a give me a break type perspective. Obviously he did it. Let's be clear here. But the law is not like that. We've got guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and even to lay a charge. Sometimes you'd be surprised maybe why they wouldn't try, lay the charge, let the guy defend it, but that's not really how it works either. They have specific check boxes they check to get to that point.
So finding out what the laws behind these not convictions, but these charges is fascinating. I'm sure it's frustrating for a lot of people, as you can contest to. And
charges are laid. What happens is police investigate. Yeah. Even in different states, it's different. In different provinces of Canada, it's different. But police investigate crime, and then they recommend charges to Crown Counsel.
Okay.
So in BC, it's the Public Prosecution Service of Canada, actually. And it's Public Prosecution Service of BC. And they lay charges. Mm-hmm. But sometimes police will recommend charges. Like maybe police recommended, I bet you they did. Police probably recommended charges of at least manslaughter. And Crown was like, we don't have enough for manslaughter. Go find more evidence.
I see.
And for now, we're going to charge them with this. That happens a lot.
Just to keep them in custody. Is that why? Okay.
Well, it's basically sometimes the police will give the Crown what they have.
Yeah.
They will recommend the charge, but it's not their call to dig into the criminal code and decide if it's enough for that.
I see.
In Ontario, police lay charges. So it is actually different in different provinces.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of jurisdictions. Because you hear that on TV show. I'm so used to BC. You'll watch like a show and they'll talk about how the cops are laying a charge, and I'm like, oh yeah, police lay charges in most jurisdictions.
I had no idea, and I'm sure a lot of people listening didn't know that either.
In a way, to me, it's surprising because they're not experts on the criminal code.
Exactly.
They know it obviously better than you and I.
Yeah.
Police officers, but they don't have a ton of training in deep legal matters.
Yeah.
I suppose in cases like that, you would then have a prosecutor who could then up the charge
Exactly.
or lower the charge or change the charge.
So just so for people who are listening to this,
Mm-hmm.
we have a criminal code book on the table in front of us. How many
Yes.
pages is that roughly?
I think it's 1900.
Okay. Very
I can open
small type and very thin paper.
Yes.
So for someone to have extensive knowledge on that
Yeah.
is incredible.
Well, yeah, it's more like 2,500 pages.
Okay, but still.
This isn't just the criminal code. It's also got a few other codes in here, such as the Charter of Rights and Evidence Act and things like
Okay.
that. But yeah, the criminal code is pretty complicated. Obviously, they would know all the main charges. All these little blue tabs here, mine are ones that are very, very common offenses.
Okay.
But that sometimes the nuance in the law, obviously, which is why lawyers are make a lot of money and are very sought after and very important in our system.
It's an art to argue this in court. Absolutely. So those are our six. Those are your six cases in the courts at the moment.
Yeah. So that's what I'm tracking now. There's a few others that I'm tracking that I won't go into at all because it's just going to get confusing, and I don't want to go on forever. There's other cases I'm tracking that are homicide adjacent. Like again, the case the one I mentioned, the indignity, that actually is from 2008.
Okay. Which one is that? Sorry, that's
Michael Scullion, who was killed after a bar fight outside of the Harrison Crossroads Inn in 2008.
Okay.
And he was in a fight with Richard McInnes. People saw Richard McInnes dragging a body to his pickup truck. He was later charged and convicted of bringing this body of Michael Scullion all the way to Tawasin. I think he went to Home Depot and got a cart and some duct tape and dumped him in the Fraser River, and he was never found.
Oh.
But he was never charged with homicide.
My
That's
goodness.
one where I don't understand why they wouldn't have had enough circumstantial evidence alone to charge, but they didn't.
Okay.
And that's one where I wrote about it last time, and I had a woman message me and say, "That's bullshit. Why aren't you telling the truth? I saw him murder him." And I'm like, well, don't tell me.
Yeah. I'm just reporting.
Yeah. So that's the map. And those are just a few samples of cases where there are charges. I'm not calling those convictions yet, but those are ones where there's a potential solution on the horizon. But of these pictures, I believe there's 29 of them that are totally unsolved. Nobody's ever been charged.
Okay.
And some of them never will be. And I will get into that in another episode for sure. Some of them maybe, and some of them maybe people will have some evidence. They will have witnessed things they don't realize. Sometimes people don't realize what they know something.
Yeah.
Quite often I'll write a story and someone will message me and say, "Oh yeah, I was there. I saw that." And I'm like, well, that police maybe already know that, and they're just giving me an anecdote.
Yeah.
But I often tell them, like, if you know something you think's of value, or even if you don't think it is, contact the police.
Yeah.
Which is something that I would say to anybody who does see this about these specific cases or any of these faces you see on here is, if you do know something, to call IHIT or if you feel more comfortable, contact me through my website, pauljhenderson.com, and let's see if some of these unsolved mysteries can maybe get a resolution.
Well, give some piece of some rest to some families, mainly, right? Yeah, it's fascinating, Paul. I think the more I understand about what you're involved in and how you're researching this, and just wanted to get to the law behind it. Yeah, I'm fascinated to hear more. Absolutely.
Well, we've got lots more to cover, and I've got lots more topics to cover, and I could go on about this for years, but
well, that's why we have a podcast, and you will go on it for years.
Yeah, for sure.
Until next time, this is Something Worth Hearing with Paul Henderson.